Okay, sorry about that. I had to use the restroom so freaking bad. It was ruining my story. And I hope my story is entertaining and good to you. And I hope and I pray that you have confidence and awareness. And, if you took the time to appreciate and watch my story and watch my video, that you have awareness and understanding of your past and your history. Excuse me. And if you are looking for fun times in your future, then I hope you find them. Or if you want to tell stories about your past or who you are, then I hope that you have then I hope that you can do that. So, where I left off, so I'm riding around in my own car with this couple who I did not need their help to change my battery, and I did not need any money or drugs from them, but they approached me in such a way that I decided to participate with them. And so what happened was I we started telling stories about different I don't remember exactly how it happened, but we started telling stories about crazy stuff that had happened to us on the streets, or like in the around drugs and homelessness in the streets and so on and so forth. So and I started talking trash about the Hells Angels. I started telling them, and they got super defensive. This couple that I had just met, and this is Hells Angels marriage counseling part 2, because part 1 I just ran out. I had to take a break, so they got super defensive. So I quickly found out and came to understand and discover that they were probably affiliated or part of the Hells Angels, or he was ex-military, ex-prison guard, and she was, I think, some type of undercover law enforcement, and they were doing stuff during COVID. So the pieces fit, and he was, stocky, that type of guy, and cut, and like obviously been around some violence, been around some drugs and that sort of thing. Even so much to the point where like they tried to help me out for how I helped them. And if you've ever been around Hells Angels, there's this other thing that they do where they like leave a piece of paper on the ground, and they like leave a piece of toilet paper like in the toilet. And like he gave me like a pair of clippers, and like anyways. So first we just drove around, and then we go to like different apartment complexes, and they start arguing with each other. They start like violently arguing with each other. And I don't know if it was like a joke, or if it was like if they wanted someone to like mediate them and like help them fall back in love with each other, or like help them like be able to coexist without killing each other. Because a lot of families, and my ex-wife, who grew up in like the prostitution rings of the Hells Angels in Sacramento, and also like the black people of San Francisco, because that was like where her main pimp was like this female pimp who had a male enforcer. They were black people, and they were in San Francisco because in the Bay Area there's tons of like Black Panthers and like Black Pride type of thing, and it's not like Bloods and Crips. It's like it's like black people. It's not. And I'm not saying that Bloods and Crips aren't black people, but like in Sacramento is like Bloods. Like I was telling the story about, I was in jail with Mozzie when his videos started to blow up. It's like Sacramento, there's like Bloods and Norteños, right? In San Francisco, it's like Black Pride. It's like, or not. I'm not insulting it like it's pride, but it's like there's the neighborhoods and the gangs and the black people in San Francisco aren't necessarily like Bloods or Crips. Now, I'm not saying there isn't Bloods or Crips there, because I've never lived there. I have family in San Francisco. Like I said, my ex-wife had done her thing in San Francisco, being a call girl and all that. But to my knowledge and experience, the gangs in the neighborhoods in San Francisco were like more just black people with their own neighborhoods and gangs and area codes and organizations. They weren't like LA and Sacramento where it was like visibly Bloods and Crips. So in the jail, in the RCCC, I'll finish that story really quick. At one night, one of the Norteños in my 10-man cell took a very extreme noticing of my tattoos. And he decided that they were Southside tattoos, which they were. And the Norteños now see, this is where I'm going to show them grace because they showed me grace. The Norteños put a hit out. They paid the blacks. They greenlighted me because they saw that I had Southern tattoos as a white boy. They said, okay, this white boy thinks, he's related to the Southsiders. So they paid the blacks. They put a hit out. Now, it wasn't like a murder hit like in prison. Now, I witnessed a murder hit in prison, and they cut the guy in half because he had drug debts. And I'm thinking that the joke was that he wouldn't pay for the drugs, so they cut him in half and they took the drugs back out of his stomach, which they did. They cut the guy in half, they stuck him in a dumpster, and the guy was dead, and no one knew what happened, and that was that. That was in Solano State Prison. Now in jail, in RCCC, I witnessed it I didn't see the guy got cut in half, but I was on the yard when it happened, and they shut the whole yard down, and it was in the yard next to us. I was on a 2-yard, and it happened on a 3-yard next to us, and they shut the whole prison down, and everyone told each other what happened. Now, I didn't see the guy getting cut in half, but what they did was, it was brilliant. They orchestrated a race riot on the prison yard, and it was a complete distraction for the guards. And then they went into the guy's cell who was hiding in his cell, and they killed him. They cut him in half, and they threw him in a dumpster. And by the time anyone knew what was going on, everyone was so distracted by the quote-unquote race riot on the yard, on the 3-yard, which was a violent yard because it was a 3 and 4 security is high-level security, which basically means like you're either going to have to pack a knife or put work in. And when I was there, and I had spent time on a 1-2-3-4 combo yard at Wasco for like 9 months, and it was great because we were in the cells, and it was all Southsiders, and it was like I was hanging out with my friends the whole time. But I would not have wanted to spend time on that 3-yard because I would have been mixed into white gangs, and I wasn't interested in putting in work or being affiliated with white gang violence at that point in my life. Nor am I really... I'm not really interested in being in any sort of prison gang violence, but for the most part, it wasn't because I was a coward. Because at one point I did have to kind of put a little bit of work in for the whites at Wasco, but I was interested in getting out. I had a couple months left, and I wasn't trying to get wrapped up in a prison riot and get get time added on and get blah 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 and have to carry a knife and all this. I was still pretty young and non-violent. I had never been stabbed yet. I had been in way less fights than after I got out of prison. So prison was still very intimidating to me. And I didn't, but anyway, so on this 3-yard, they cut this guy in half and they killed this guy. But because he had a drug debt, he had like over 1,000, I don't remember what it was. You can Google it and find it. And it was not really sad because that's what happens in prison when you have debts. And the minute you get into prison, your race warns you, do not form a debt. And this guy, he was a non-affiliate Mexican. And I think he just gained, the rumor on the yard was that it was the Mexican Mafia who did it. That I never heard the Southsiders or the Mexican Mafia refer to themselves as the Mexican Mafia. If you're a non-affiliate Mexican, that means you're a paisa. There's no really other non-affiliate Mexican group besides Southerners, Northerners, and paisas and non-affiliate, gang affiliate Mexicans when I was there in California. And I met paisas who were basically like, they had killed people, and it was easier for them to like live. From my perspective, this was their story to me. I met Pisces who, when I came on the yard, they helped me out. They gave me food. They sold me CD players. They were some of my best friends. They were like some of the friends I had on the street. Regardless of the fact that I was hanging out and eating with Southsiders and whites, I had so much Mexican friends and family on the streets. I met Pisces who had got gun charges and drug charges. And I also met Pisces who they told me they blew people's head off with shotguns. And basically, from my perspective, it was easier for them to live in the California prison system than be on the run from the cartel. So it was like it was a better life for them to live in the California prison system than be out on the run from the cartel, which is a really interesting dilemma to live through. So they were some of the coolest, and I'm not saying, oh, I thought they were cool because they were murderers, but you meet different people in prison. You meet people who are intimidation artists and extortionists, and then you meet people who you find out are killers and are some of the most cool. Like, it's weird, the paradigms and the parallels you experience with prison. And I'm not gonna glorify violence, and I'm not gonna glorify gangs, but like, it's not always what you expect. And a lot of the people who are doing life because they killed people are like nice looking old men. They're not the guys. Most of the guys who are like tatted up and buff are doing like 3 and 4 year stints behind. And I'm not talking trash about them either, but like and there's also gang members who are lifers. So, but like your typical prison lifer, when I was there on the yards I went to, was like an older guy or a young guy who got in a wrong situation at the wrong time, and they either killed someone or they were involved in a situation where someone died and they got life in prison. Like, for example, the reason I say this is like the one Southsider the shot callers, when I was at Wasco, the Southside shot callers, at first the one was from Blythe, and he was doing like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years over violence, over 80% violence, drug charges, whatever. He was not doing life in prison. It was because of who he was and where he was from that he was a shot caller. Now, the people that also competed with the keys for him was Florence 13, and they were like 2 youngsters, younger than me, and like, in my opinion, like, no disrespect, but like, you could tell that they were young and somewhat unexperienced. And it was because of who they were and where they were from that they were shot callers. It wasn't because they were killers or because they were doing life. Now, the one Southsider that I can remember who was a lifer, or who was facing 25 to life or facing like some serious prison time. I'm pretty sure he was facing life, and it's actually pretty sad now that you think about it. What his story was. And he did sit down and eat with the shot callers. Now, he wasn't necessarily a shot caller, but what his story was that he and his friends were jumping someone, and I don't think it was a gang initiation, but they were jumping someone, and the person died. Now, whether it was a rival gang or an innocent bystander or someone just randomly on the street that they decided they wanted to jump, but they jumped the person and the person died, so that ended up him with like a life sentence or like facing a life sentence. Or if I remember correctly, it was a life sentence, which is freaking sad because the person died, and sad because like, now, I'm not discrediting that person's life, but I'm saying like sad from his perspective because he was a really smart, nice person. And when you looked at him, he wasn't the big macho dude with tattoos all over him. He was almost like a normal looking person, and he was getting life in prison because he decided to jump somebody and the person died. And I'm not saying it's sad that, oh, he killed someone and he has to do life. I'm saying it's sad that he was the same age as me. I'm 32. I was born in 1990. He was maybe a year or two older than me, I think. I think he was born in 1987 or 1989. And it's sad because he threw his life away because he decided to jump someone some night, and he ended up with life in prison. And it's not funny, but it's freaking it's that's really how it is. So fast forward, rewind to RCCC, the branch, Sacramento County. So the Norteños, who were I'm in this Norteño blood jail where Zilla and Mozzie, and I'm no disrespect to Stars and Zilla. Stars is North Sacramento, usually Cash Money Lavish D. That's Stars Up. Other people, I'm not going to name them, other rappers, other major affiliates with Stars. That is not who Mozzie is affiliated with. Mozzie was affiliated with Zilla, which is like South Sacramento, Oak Park. And basically, when I don't know how they stand today, I don't really care because I'm not a blood. I'm not black. I don't think I'm black or a blood affiliate. But in jail at that time, if you were Zilla or Stars, you were supposed to fight each other just by being in each other's presence. So what happened was Mozzie was in a dorm, and shout out, much love to Mozzie. I'm not saying anything bad about Mozzie. So he was in a dorm at the branch, and there was a black Crip in the dorm and Mozzie, I guess the Crip came up to the Bloods. It wasn't Stars, I guess it was Zilla. And he started calling them cuz. And Mozzie was not having it, so Mozzie ended up fighting this Crip in jail because they called him cuz, or he called his friends cuz. And then they transferred Mozzie into RBF W2, which is a 10-man cell. So he went from a dormitory, which is like 30 or 40 people, and it's hectic, and I hate dorms. I like 2-man cells or 1-man cells. I have very rarely been in a dorm that I like. It's very open. It's theft and disrespect is present. It's usually on low security yards. I was in a 1- and 2-man cell when I was at Wasco, which was a 1, 2, 3, 4 yard. So it was all level security. So basically it was a 3 and 4 yard. It was a 3 and 4 yard security. It was a 3 and 4 yard program, and I was there for 9 months, and to me it was amazing because it was almost all Southsiders who were my best friends out on the streets. So when I go to prison and I'm living in a 10-man in a dorm setting with Norteños and Bloods, where everyone is all, yo, Blood, yo, NA, yo, Blood, yo, and everyone's black and red, and even the white boys who in prison eat in program with Southsiders in Northern California are oh, excuse me one sec while this guy decides he's going to walk by my car. I'm not going to sit here and let this goofball come up and act like he's part of my life right now. Sorry, it's so annoying. And he thinks he's going to, oh my God. So I'll just let him pass and do his thing because he has no reason to be walking by me. He has no reason to be trying to be a part of my life right now. He's got his pants sagging like the dirtbag that he is, like the filthy scum that he is. Go on. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, go on. Continue. Keep telling yourself whoever you are. I don't care. You're not. No. So anyways, sorry, I'm extremely sensitive to people like that on the streets, what this whole video is about. So in the branch, RCCC, which is called the branch, there's the main jail in Sacramento County, which is the Twin Towers or whatever. No, that's LA. There's the main jail in Sacramento County, downtown, which is it's like up. I was there for a little bit. And I was with they put me in a black guy from the Bay Area an undercover agent had sold him a street sweeper shotgun, and he ended up doing some Fed time because he bought a street sweeper shotgun from an undercover agent and got a federal crime for that. Now, once I found out that I was going to prison for my DUIs, I got transferred out to the branch and put in a 10-man cell with a bunch of Northsiders, Bloods, Asians, and white boys who had no idea what was going on or were disloyal to what prison politics were. And sorry to tell you the truth, but that's what they were. They were some seriously confused white boys who thought that they were Northsiders and Bloods or whatever. But once you get to prison, and you're a white boy, you don't, and you ride white boy or wood or skinhead or whatever, you don't eat with Bloods, you don't eat with Northsiders, you eat with Southsiders and whites. That's prison politics in California. That's what they were when I was there. That's what they have been since freaking 80s and 90s. And if they're different now, I'm completely unaware of that. So basically in Sacramento County, there's this spin-off of white boys who think that they're Northsiders, and they say scrap and they act like they're tough and they're bad. And there was even one white boy who had Nazi tattoos, and he didn't even follow the white boy program. So basically, but once these quote unquote white boys get out of county jail and get out of county jail and go to prison, none of this stupid black Northside politics fly. And second off, they're not going to go over there and talk about scraps, because when I lived in Sacramento and gangs were active, not going there today, and I'm not stirring up anything, and I'm not like love to all the Bloods and the Northsiders and all the white people in Sacramento, unless they still have some, except for the white, if there's white boys in Sacramento that still have something to say, that would bother me. But at this point, I'm at peace with most of the people in Sacramento. The last time I was there, I was at peace with everybody. It was for the most part, like it wasn't like it was when I was a youngster, causing problems and getting into different stuff like that. So there was all these white boys who say the N-word or eat with blacks and Northsiders, and then if they were to actually go to prison and act like they hate, like they're gangbanging on Southsiders, they would see where these prison politics came from in LA, where the skinheads and the Southsiders basically invented prison politics. Because blacks don't really have they don't have nearly as structured gangs as the whites and the Southsiders. It's just the truth. Bloods and Crips don't check paperwork. The only thing that we were aware of that Bloods and Crips don't do is sell together. Whites and Southerners have rules. Blacks can take it. Blacks, it's more like every man for themselves. It's like the concrete jungle. I respect it. I'm not discrediting it. That's just the same way that their politics are on the street. Their gang politics in prison in California when I was there are not nearly as organized or fear-driven as the whites and the Southerners. Now, the Northsiders basically try to copy the Southsiders, but they're a way smaller gang. They're basically a duplication of the Southern gang. All their rules. I'm not saying that they're weaker or they're stronger or lesser, but the truth is that the Northsiders are basically modeled after the Southerners, and because that's what the Mexican Mafia was, and they're a very small. I came across probably altogether 15 Northsiders while I did about a year in prison, not counting my jail time. I did altogether 18 months, and come across. Now, in county, in Sacramento, I probably came across 40 Northsiders altogether, and numerous Bloods. That's like all there was. And I saw one Southsider who I didn't eat or drink with because I didn't tell the police that I was a Southsider. But the Northsiders eventually found out and put a hit out on me one night, and they paid the blacks to put a hit on me and it wasn't a kill. It was a removal hit. So what the blacks were supposed to do was beat me up and make me roll up and leave the cell and go into PC, which did not happen. And the blacks did not keep their side of it. And they eventually apologized to me. The blacks came to me and apologized and said, okay, we have no beef with you. And then I went to prison, where I found out that where Southsiders ran the prison, which was the exact opposite of this one county of California where the Northsiders ran the jails. And so I went from having to watch my back day in and day out in the showers at all times because I was one Southsider in these Northside run jails, going to prison where it's 80% Southsiders, and I was like in heaven. Not in heaven, but I went from like living in hell or a version of hell, or like a really miserable place, and basically living in fear, and also to like living with like hundreds of homeboys, because the Southerners maintained like I said 80% of the prison population. So what happened, so the Northsiders put a hit out on me, a green light. The blacks did not keep their side of it. The blacks eventually apologized to me. The Northsiders never really did anything else about it. They just kind of acted weird around me. And then I eventually went to prison. I checked in with the shot callers, the Southsiders in prison. I paid tax, and it was all good. And I lived a happy life, and I got out of prison with clean paperwork, and I made friends who were on, shot callers in prison. I didn't keep any friendships with any skinheads or any white gang members. I came across different white gangs, IRA, different Irish white gang of population. The main white gangs that I came across were the skinheads. Shout out to the skinheads, all love, no disrespect to them. But I ended up leaving prison with addresses and friendships from different Southside, shot callers and neighborhoods and so on and so forth. So fast forward a million times to now it's COVID, and I'm riding around half drunk with a childlike state of mind because I smashed my head, and this guy starts telling me how he is a ex-prison guard who went undercover with the MI in Folsom Prison, which I had never done time in Folsom Prison, but I had delivered pizzas there, and it sounded entirely true, and I still believe it to be true because of all his tattoos and the way he carried himself, and his wife, who I think they were doing undercover police work. So, and when I was in jail with Mozzie again, he was really cool with me. He kind of made fun of me because I had poofy hair. He called me Clay Aiken. He eventually sat down with me one night, and he was asking me about different drugs. He asked me he thought that designer drugs meant that it was a drug that cost a lot of money for you to pay for and get to do. What a designer drug actually is a drug where you pay. A designer drug is a drug where the scientists change the chemical compound very slightly, and it makes the drug legal. That's what a designer drug. It has nothing to do with the cost of the drug or the fact you have to pay for it. And he did not know that. So he thought promethazine with lean was a designer drug because only people with money could afford it, just like designer clothes. When in fact a designer drug is something where the scientists alter the chemical compound to make it not a scheduled drug so it can be sold illegally, like ecstasy was originally a designer drug, I believe. Or for example, you could consider spice or K1, that smoking stuff, a designer drug, because it's like synthetic marijuana to be made illegal. So he also asked me what it felt like to do mushrooms and so on and so forth. So he was super cool, and it was right when his video started to blow up. And that was cool to meet someone who ended up being a world famous rapper who made millions of dollars. I offered to shoot music videos for him. He just kind of laughed it off because at that point his YouTube videos were getting hundreds of thousands of plays. I had already attempted to make music videos for Bay Area and Sacramento rap artists, and I did, and some of them are on YouTube right now. You can find them at the beginning of my channel history. I never got successful with making music videos, and I never really got that into it because my camera got stolen by prostitutes, and it was a lot of work to edit music videos. I ended up becoming more of a musician than a video editor. But for what it's worth, I met Mozzie when his videos started to blow up, and I offered to shoot music videos for him, and he just basically said no. He didn't need anyone to shoot music videos for him because to him it probably felt like someone who was trying to just latch onto him and be a part of his fame. And so fast forward 100 million back to these people who helped me, these Hells Angels. We were riding around. It's during COVID. I start talking trash about the Hells Angels because they had screwed me over, and they got super defensive. So I quickly found out, because of how defensive they were how defensive they were about me talking about the Hells Angels, that they're probably Hells Angels affiliates. So at one point during this 2-day debacle, we go to an apartment complex in Sacramento, and they start physically fighting with each other. And I can't tell if it's staged, or if it's what is going on with these two people who are older than me. And now I find out they're like Hells Angels people. And I break them up, and I tell them, hey, you guys got to stop fighting. You guys got to love each other. You're not supposed to physically fight. You're supposed to love each other. And that's why it's kind of the joke of the name of the video is Hells Angel Marriage Counseling, because me and my wife, who had grown up in this prostitution ring of Hells Angels, and now to this couple who are like undercover cops, ex-prison guards, and they're physically fighting with each other. In many other cases across the state and across Nevada, I had you sometimes see street angels, as I call them. If there's a male and female, they'll sometimes start fighting out loud physically in the street. It's like they're chasing each other's demons. And it's a very specific, and once you see street angels, a man and a woman start fighting, it's like you recognize it from a mile away. They yell like as loud as they can, and they get in each other's faces, and they do everything but like whoop each other's butts. And I think the whole point of it is like to get as mad at each other, and to get like as physical with, like to get as much into like the physical fighting without as actually physically fighting. So to me, the joke is it's called Hells Angels Marriage Counseling. And there's been numerous times where like just my spiritual experience and my spiritual presence, the Hells Angels, street angels, man and woman, you know, a guy with this female, go back and watch all the Hells Angels videos, all the movies. It's a classic thing for a Hells Angel and his girl. They ride with the specific girl, or they have a specific girl, whether they pass her around or whether it's his wife or his girl. They get into a beef, they get into a fight, and then they let her go, or they pass her on, or they try to settle it, or they decide to stick it. I mean, the more and more you watch and learn about the Hells Angels, the more it just becomes like a second mind to you. And I don't think I'm a Hells Angel. I don't try to be a Hells Angel, but it's just the truth of who they are and what you learn about them. And if that's not it, then they put off a dang good impression that it made me believe it on the streets and in my experiences. So later that night, you know, we drive around. They do drugs at the mall. We cruise around in my car. We go to like this one Quickie Mart where there's like a young girl like being molested or raped, like prostituted out in the back of the Quickie Mart, and we like camp out in the parking lot of this Quickie Mart until eventually like the people like let the girl out. Like they're like Middle Eastern people, and like for some reason these undercover cops like knew that there was like an underage girl being molested or pimped out in the back. That's all I could gather from this situation. And eventually they let this young girl out of the store. And like I told you, my ex-wife, who had been raped and molested as a child and then grew up in the prostitution rings of Sacramento with the Hells Angels and the Black Pimps of San Francisco. And here we are, you know, like rescuing this young girl from coming out of a Quickie Mart or whatever it was. And I'm still like half drunk, wanting to get high, trying to get off of my hangover. And then eventually they take me to the Thunder Valley Casino in Roseville, California. And Roseville, California is a notorious Hells Angels area. They've even got churches and all that stuff and everything. And they just abandon me at a casino. They take me up to the casino. They give me $20 to play in the casino games, and then they just abandon me. And part of me is mad. And part of me, you know, they just leave me in the parking lot with my own car. They don't steal from me. They just completely abandon me. And part of me is like mad, right? Because no one likes to get ditched. No one likes to be abandoned and sit there waiting and wondering what's going to happen. And then the other part of me is like, I've dealt with Hells Angels before, and that's just how they are. Now, I'm not saying that about the patch wearers. I'm not saying that about the guys with the vests and the patches. But the street angels, the drug users on the street, or the undercovers, or the whatever, the prospects, or the as I call them, street angels, that is almost every time I've ever been around them or dealt with them, that is what they do. They will just abandon you somewhere. And if you watch my first video, that's exactly what they did. They abandoned me somewhere. So I just take it as, well, I guess that's the end of that. And I get in my car, or I'm sitting in my car, and I take my car back to the motel, and I go in my room, and I go to bed. And the next morning, knock, 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 they're at my front door of my Motel 6. And I'm pretty sure what they really needed from me was like a room to shower and bathe and use the bathroom and like use the bathroom and like have a room to post up in for a night or two, because they had a car, they had drugs, they had some money. At the end of it all, I mean, they showed me a lot of love. We cruised around in my car. They helped me. They told me, like, basically the police are my friend, and that the Hells Angels are my friends, and that not like like I said, they were doing weird missions like in apartment complexes, like chasing out like molesters and like people, like bad situations like that. And like, and they ended up going to the casino, and then they ended up sitting in my my Motel 6 room with me for a while. And what I ended up, my first experience with the Hells Angels, I got robbed and abandoned, and it was totally negative, and it made me hate the Hells Angels. Now, the last experience I had with them, I didn't gain anything, and I didn't need their help, but I consider that guy and his girl like family, because at the end of it all, I put gas in their car, and I gave them jewelry and a cell phone worth hundreds of dollars. And I haven't really seen any of that come back to me physically yet. I've had a couple odd bank accounts passed off to me, but I have no actual access to transferring or using the money. And I've had one random check after them sent to my house for $2,700, but I never could cash the check. And if you watch motorcycle gang movies, a lot of times people who help the motorcycle gangs will randomly get like money in the mail or get a check in the mail. So I got this randomly check written out to me for $2,700, but I never could cash the check. Every bank I ever took it to, they told me it was a fake check, and they wrote on it, and from my perspective, they defaced the check and they made it impossible to cash. And then eventually the banks wouldn't take it. So I sent it back to the address who sent it to me, and I said, hey, I think what I said was like, I don't know if you're a Hells Angel. I don't know who you are. Like, I appreciate you sending me this check for $2,700, but I was not able to cash it, and I was not able to use it or benefit from it at all. So after all the money and the time and the resources that I lost to the Hells Angels to, picking me up on the street when I was a naive white boy, and even when they even tried to induct me into their circle in Redding the first time, the second time I consider them like family. The first time they were drug addicts, they were street, they were no good. It was they took complete advantage of someone who had some money and some time, and they just screwed me over. They were young, they were crystal meth addicts, they sold drugs. I mean, like the second time, I did not need their help, nor did I benefit from the experience monetarily, but it gave me a love and a respect for these people and for their struggle. And like I said, at the end of it all, they gave me like $20 to use in the casino, and I gave them like $40 in their gas tank, or $50 in their gas tank, and I gave them gold and diamond jewelry and sapphire jewelry, and I also gave them a $500 and $600 cell phone for free. And they went on their way in their Chrysler 300, and I went on my way in my car, and I never saw them again. And like I said, and since then, I have not physically had anything, like returned to me money-wise. Like I said, I've had multiple strange Bitcoin accounts handed to me via Twitter, but I don't have the information to actually take money from those accounts. I don't have the keys to actually, so I have the login information to, like, just so randomly, I have these Bitcoin accounts handed off to me via Twitter. It says, help me manage this Bitcoin account. And then when I go and research it further, I go on the trail to watch these kidnapping movies, which is what the Hells Angels originally did to me, was like kidnap me. And it's so crazy. It's like I'm on this wild goose hunt for these Bitcoin accounts that have a lot of money in them, but I have no actual password information to, it's not a password, okay? I have the login information for the Bitcoin accounts, but I don't have the key code to actually withdraw Bitcoin or use the Bitcoin. So it's like, so I don't really know if it's like a taunt or like a wild goose chase, or if like someday I'm going to have access to these Bitcoins and have this money. So I have not actually been compensated. So in my opinion, now what I gave to the second Hells Angels, that was a gift. And I love those people like family, whether they care about me or think I should, whatever. But in terms of like actually physically getting a return on like what I've given to them, I haven't seen it yet. And I don't know if that's a joke or a slap in my face, but either way, I'm not talking bad about them. But if you're on, but anyways, so that was marriage counseling with the Hells Angels. And, you know, since then, I've just learned how deep they run with law enforcement, with Las Vegas, with Motel 6s, with drug addicts on the street, with beggars on the street, with every if and or but type of person that there can be. And I had no idea that the area that my parents grew up in, like, is the birthplace of the Hells Angels. I mean, like, the more I have on my YouTube channel, there's a playlist, and it's like all the free Hells Angels movies on YouTube, and the more I watched them, the more I learned about who I was. Not like, obviously, the more I learned about their influence in the state of California with the CHP and with the normal motorcycle gangs, and with the fact that, like, I'm pretty sure my mom and my aunt, her sister, had some type of negative experience with them growing up in San Bernardino and areas. And I mean, my dad, the complete opposite of the spectrum. They're Catholic Germans from Germany, and farmers from Missouri. So they have like absolutely zero affiliation with the Hells Angels, besides the fact that they were in World War II. But they have like they have a Catholic. Half my dad's side of the family is married to Mexicans, and half of them are Catholics from the military, and there's zero affiliation with the Hells Angels. And then my mom's side of the family, who's like British Air Force, like British Americans who are in the American Air Force, and I had some type of, like, I think, bad experiences with them in high school, coming to me growing up, dealing with them in these two stories. So it's crazy. It's all love. It's crazy stories. But that being said, you know, that's the end of the story. I never saw them again. I never spoke to them again. And that was that. And the only thing left, that's all I have to say. I know who I am today. I'm a Christian. I'm a child of God. I'm Matthew Harrison Allen. I don't look at myself as a Hells Angel. I have no desire of joining the Hells Angels, but some people do, and that's their whole life and what they, and they're, so that's the story number 2. So have a good night, and